All right, John.
All right, Sandra. So just about 12 hours after the Senate passed that bill to fund most of DHS, it looks like we could be headed for a train wreck in the House, because rather than just passing a version of the Senate bill funding TSA and getting out of town, there's a possibility that the House is not going to simply vote for the Senate bill and vote for a different bill. Chad Pergram is monitoring it all. He's on Capitol Hill. Chad, this would be bad, because this would mean that TSA agents would not get paid.
This would extend the shutdown. And of course, President Trump had said that, by executive order, he would try to make sure that they got paid. But this was always going to be the wild card when the Senate passed this overnight. Would this be able to command the votes in the House of Representatives? You had progressives who said that they would probably vote no because there were no reforms to ICE. But there were a lot of Democrats, including Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader, and also Rosa DeLauro, the top Democrat on the Appropriations Committee, who signaled that they were for this. They said that this is a win. And so we thought that with a combination of some Republicans and maybe lots of Democrats, they could move this through the House. But in the past 45 minutes to an hour here, House Speaker Mike Johnson, after a conference call with his members, has talked about a proposal of a 60-day interim spending bill to fund all of DHS, fund ICE, fund the Border Patrol, and what that would do if that were to pass the House of Representatives. They would lose all that Democratic support. As I always say, it's about the math. They would have to do this on their own. But the problem is that they would be out of sync with the Senate. What happened that the Senate was doing, and this always ticks off the House of Representatives, is when they jam them. They send over something and they say it's take it or leave it, which is what happened when they left in the middle of the night last night. So what would happen here if the House were to pass this? The Senate is meeting in what they call these pro forma, these abbreviated sessions for the next 2 weeks. The next one is Monday at 10:30, and they would have to take it or leave it, whatever the House passed. Well, all it would take is an objection from any senator, maybe a Republican, probably more so a Democrat, who would say this is not what we voted for. This also signals that the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader John Thune are not on the same page. And just to show you just how much this has devolved over the past hour or so, and we thought it was pretty bad coming into the early morning here, Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader, he was supposed to have a press conference at 12:30. That was canceled. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, was supposed to have a press conference a little bit after 1 o'clock. We were just told that was postponed. So we don't know what the machinations are behind the scenes. If they were to pass that bill in the House, all that would do is prolong the government shutdown. So the House and Senate have to get on the same page at some point, and that's not the case right now. That's bad news.
We understand that Speaker Johnson is going to be having an availability in about a half an hour, maybe a little more than a half an hour. Chad, I can't believe that after it looked like we got this close to funding TSA, that Republicans in the House are going to pull the rug out from underneath this, because you have people on these long lines in airports. You have these TSA agents who are experiencing such hardship, who thought that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. How can these members in good conscience continue the shutdown?
Well, that's the problem here. Some of them, Ralph Norman, the Republican from South Carolina, said, I'm not going to vote for the bill because I want the Save America Act, the voting ID bill attached to that. That's not going to happen. So you start to have that attrition there. And is this a play by Mike Johnson just to say, OK, we have to do something. We have to put down our marker. The Senate put down its marker. The House put down a completely different marker yesterday. You keep having the House and Senate vote on these competing things, and ne'er the twain shall meet, and that's why the shutdown continues. This was not pre-baked in the Senate last night. I thought it was pretty interesting that, they did this on a voice vote, so there's not actually documentation as who would actually be opposed to that. So they passed it last night and kind of stuck it over to the House.
All right. Chad Pergram with the latest for us. Chad, thank you.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.